I call to order the July 23rd, 2024 City Council Committee of the Whole meeting. City Clerk Clark, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember O'Rear.
Here.
Councilmember Roop.
Here.
Councilmember Williams.
Here.
Councilmember Roche.
Here.
Councilmember Pinkerton.
Here.
Councilmember Hutchings.
Here.
Mayor Shewmaker.
Here. Please rise as you are able and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Each member of council has received a copy of the minutes from our June 25th, 2024 meeting. Were there any corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, they will stand approved as written. As I mentioned before we started this evening, we have no one signed up for citizen comments, so we'll move on to our staff reports, starting with our financial report from our Finance Director, Christine Furino. Director Furino.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. A few highlights from the June financial report. General fund revenues for June were at 108% of the budget, with year-to-date totals at $25.3 million. June expenses are at 92% of the budget, with a year-to-date total of $21.7 million. Sewer fund revenues for June are at 187% of the budget, with a year-to-date total of $4.1 million. And expenses are at 90% of the budget, with a year-to-date total of $1.1 million. Hospitality and accommodations fund revenues for June are at 142% of the budget, with a year-to-date total of $5.2 million. June expenses are at 101% of the budget, with a year-to-date total of $3.1 million. And the Public Works Enterprise Fund revenues for June are at 108% of the budget, with a year-to-date total of $1.6 million, and the expenses are 85% of the budget, with a year-to-date total of $1 million. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Council? I just have one comment. That is the last report for the fiscal year, for last fiscal year. And the thing that I notice across the board is all of the revenues being well above the budgeted amount, some cases far above the budgeted amount. But not only that, all of the expenditures being in most cases below what was budgeted, except I think in just one case. And again, that amount was far less than what the revenues were. And I just want to thank Director Furino, Administrator Gracely, and all of our department heads who are here this evening for having this city, our fund balances in a marvelous place. I just bow to you in how well you are managing things and running things, and just want to thank you very, very much.
Well, thank you. The department heads do a really great job.
Absolutely, absolutely, all of you. You deserve so much credit.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Furino. Item 6B, our City Administrator report from Administrator Gracely. Administrator Gracely.
Yes, thank you. Hello, Mayor and Council. I'm just going to hit a couple of highlights on this, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. I wanted to let you know specifically that with regard to the downtown revitalization and streetscape project, as you know, we're struggling a bit with cost escalations and getting all the money that we need to complete that project based on the latest estimate, which is based on recent bids received. So we know what the market is doing now, and we have a better idea, and we still have a significant shortfall, but we are inching our way toward having all the revenue we need. The state did provide another $1 million in earmark funding from the FY25 budget. And then I am currently working on a C-Fund application for $1.5 million that would go toward that budget as well. Playground equipment is being installed at City Park, and it is magnificent. It is going to be unlike any other playground that we have in the city, and I think everybody will be amazed and in awe of it. The gymnasium renovation is complete. We actually came in under budget on that project, and we're being refunded about $30,000. And we had a maximum guaranteed price with Edifice, but as they have cost savings, those savings get passed on to us. And so that's a nice thing to be well under budget on that one. We have thought of a name for the gymnasium. We don't want to keep calling it the gymnasium since it's going to be an event venue. We all like the name Academy Hall. It pays homage to the school. And also the physical address of the building is on Academy Street. So we anticipate starting to rent that venue in November. The pump track is on schedule to be picked up and installed, not next week, but the following. So I'll give you an update on that as we get closer to finalizing that. And of course, we'll plan for a nice dedication for not only the pump track, but also for the gymnasium. We'll try to have that sometime in later August, where we can invite the public over to see what we've done with that space. And I think you'll all be amazed. And I know we're all excited about the pump track. Director Davis and Director West are working together on coordinating getting that moved and installed over at Alder Park. So it is moving forward. And that's really all I wanted to highlight. But like I said, if you have specific questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you. Councilmember Root.
Of the roads and streets that we're going to be doing, how much of that budget is going toward streets that are state streets?
In the downtown project, all of North and Southeast Main, all of East Curtis. So I would say about, in terms of the total linear footage, probably about half are state roads. We have removed Nichols from our project scope because DOT is going to be resurfacing from West Georgia at the 385 interchange all the way to along West Georgia and Maple to the intersection with West Curtis. So we were able to take that part of the project out of our scope for the downtown project since it is scheduled to be resurfaced. I think they're letting bids on that in December and anticipating resurfacing being completed by July of next year.
So I think the original costs were 12 to 14 million. We're upwards of 30 million, and half of that is state streets. So roughly 15 million of it is state streets.
Yes.
We got $1 million back from the state.
And $1 million last year in the FY24 budget. So yes, still nowhere what we need, but
Malden got 10 million on projects that aren't even scheduled from the state.
they're not shovel ready. Correct.
They're probably, in my opinion, I don't know
And-
when
and-
they're ready, but yeah.
Yeah.
A little disappointed about that. So he has promised us, the state has promised us extra funds for next year.
Yes.
Those monies will be after the project is completed. How will we?
Those monies will be after the project is let. We won't be anywhere near completion by then because we
So
probably
we'll start,
won't.
okay.
Yeah, we likely won't start construction now until the first of the year with the holidays, and by the time it goes out to bid, it'll likely be January. So we'll be about halfway into the state's current fiscal year when the project bids come back, and that's when I'll meet, once I know an exact number on the project, that's when we'll need to have a discussion about how we want to proceed. I believe the state is acting in good faith to provide that money, but there's no guarantee. It's based on whether or not they have a surplus in the state budget, what other earmark requests they get. So there's not going to be a contract with the state at that point to say we're giving you this money July 1. So we're going to have to talk about how we proceed. We have plenty of money to start the project. We have plenty of money probably to complete the first year of the project without help from the state. But obviously we're going to have to know where the money is coming from when we sign those contracts. So we'll talk more about it once the bids come in. But
Just one follow-up question. Regardless of what we get in the future from the state, since this budget is more than double how are we doing these projects? What are we cutting to prevent raising taxes? In other words, how are we paying for that without raising taxes?
Well, this project is being funded through hospitality and accommodations tax revenue bonds, which means it's all hospitality and accommodations tax. And you heard Director Furino's report where we are at 152% of revenues on the current or the previous fiscal year ending June 30th. And so we know those hospitality taxes are going to continue to increase as we add new restaurants. More people are coming into the city to dine. And so I anticipate that fund will continue to increase. We do have some fund balance in that project. We also have plenty of borrowing capacity left. So there's a chance that we may have to go back to the bond market and borrow more money to make up for the shortfall. It still leaves us with borrowing capacity if we have to do that, but when the time comes and we know the total price, part of the discussion I'll have with you all is to understand that if the state does not follow through with the funding, we cut everything we can cut out of the project scope, that we would have to, at that point, look at going to the bond market to get the rest of the financing for the project.
Okay. One more question. I lied. I'm sorry. I have another one. And I meant to ask Director Furino, and perhaps maybe she's better to ask, but I'll ask her first. Do we know yet, since the fiscal year has ended, how many less business licenses we got and those revenues than we did the year before, the year prior to that?
I don't know that number right offhand. I believe we were well over budget in business licenses by a considerable amount. So, that tells me that we had significantly more business licenses issued this past fiscal year than the previous one.
It seemed like last year was lower than the year before, so they're up from the last 2 years. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Hutchings.
On the on-track Alder Park, I've talked with several council members, and we'd like to do some kind of event after we get everything in place. If you could keep us posted on when that would be a good time to do that, so we can get a little heads up and get some information out to everybody beforehand.
Sure. It would be great to do that in conjunction with the ribbon cutting, which would likely be third week in August, maybe, by the time we have everything ready. Perhaps Director Davis has a better idea of when that might be for the completion of the pump track.
Barring weather, hopefully, probably around the fourth weekend of August, we should have it. And again, that's weather, and that's how easy Public Works and our guys can get it dismantled, put back in place. So that's what we're shooting for. Maybe worst case scenario, I'd say the week after Labor Day. We'll do nothing that week.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I'll certainly, as they start getting it on site and putting it together, we'll have a better idea of when the completion will be.
And on the city park, I have to ask this question. When are we going to apply for city designation?
Tree City will be complete when the mayor reads an Arbor Day proclamation at the city's tree lighting. We will officially be a Tree City USA on December 5th. That's the last step. All of the other steps have been taken, and the very last thing we do, and what we will need to do every year after our initial designation, is to continue to have a proclamation for Arbor Day. And so that will not only happen December 5th of this year, but the first Thursday of every December from this point forward.
Thank you.
Council? Councilmember Pinkerton.
It's been a little while, but what's the status on board member status with Green Link and the bus company?
The attorneys are still, all of the respective attorneys for all the jurisdictions that are involved in that are still reviewing the intergovernmental agreement, and I don't have anything to present to you for you to vote on and for us to enter into until we have the review by all the attorneys. I haven't had an update recently, but.
Okay.
Councilmember O'Rear.
Piggybacking on Councilmember Pinkerton there, with the municipal complex complete in October on time, which sounds great. One of the key things that I voted on to fund Greenlink was the shifting of bus stops to expand paratransit, including one in front of what's going to be the new courthouse, which I think pretty much is a no-brainer on that one. So is that still part of the discussion and when we're talking about the intergovernmental agreement and the board seat? Because to me, that was the most paramount of the three topics.
So that won't be part of the intergovernmental
One
agreement.
of that, yeah.
But yes, those
Just
discussions are still ongoing.
Yeah, because that needs to, really, that one needs to get done there and shift around to expand that paratransit footprint to cover as many of taxpayers of Simpsonville as humanly possible. So, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember.
Follow-up question, have the funds started, have we started paying for them for the new contract that we just passed?
So the money is in the Joe, the money was available on July 1, but we've not been invoiced by GTA for any of that yet. And they may be waiting until we have signed intergovernmental agreements before they send out invoices for that money.
Yeah, I would personally like to hold funds until we get what we thought we agreed to. I'll just be on record saying that. Thank you.
So, thank you, Administrator Graceland.
Thank you.
Our department heads are here from all of the various departments and are available for questions and comments. Are there any questions or comments from council? Councilmember Root.
Sorry, I don't mean to prolong this meeting, I really don't. Chief, I got a quick question for Chief Hanshaw, if you will. I meant to ask you for the last one and I forgot. I'm going to remember because I traveled this week and I saw a lot of this. There's a lot of cities, I think Greer and Malden, and I think Greenville. So 3 surrounding cities have required the police officers to ride with blue lights, not flashing, but just on. And I've read a recent article saying that has deterred a lot of crime and accidents. I don't know if there's enough data for that parallel, but I wanted to see where we were, if you discussed that with your officers and why or why not you might implement that.
Yes, sir. You're referring to what our term is cruise lights. It's the 2 blue lights usually on the front that you see them. We currently have those in our vehicle. We don't mandate that they do it all the time because there are some times we would prefer to not be seen in times. There's an argument for that type of deterrent also when it comes to fighting crime or trying to catch them doing things wrong. So we do use them from time to time, so you may occasionally see our guys, but we do it on an as-needed basis. So when we feel like there's a need or a purpose for doing it in an area where we want to be visible and we want to have that high visibility and be seen, then they have the option to do so. We just don't mandate that they do it all the time.
That's fine. Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Roberts.
Real quick, I saw you pretty much closed the gap with the dispatchers, so you're fully staffed and you're pretty short staffed on the officers. It sounds like everything's working pretty well, because I know you and I talked about the importance of personnel, and 3 officers short in the size of Simpsonville doesn't seem critical at this point, but I want to congratulate you on keeping the personnel numbers where they need to be for the people of Simpsonville, and if there's anything we need to try to help recruit officers or whatnot. I actually talked to someone a couple of weeks ago that had prior experience and might come to Simpsonville. So, but I appreciate those efforts on behalf of the citizens of Simpsonville.
We appreciate the recruiting efforts. We're looking for people all the time, and we've been fortunate to grab some folks with some experience, so we're real excited about that. So,
Thanks.
all right, thank you.
Councilmember Hutchings.
Chief, we had, looks like a spate of auto braking incidents on June 6th at Heritage Park. Can you tell us what that was about?
Yes, our guys have been working on that. They've got some persons of interest, so I think we're close to hopefully having some closure on some of those. We've had we're not the only ones with a rash on, but our guys have been working pretty diligent on some things and some follow-up. So we've got some people of interest, so we're feeling good about this.
Was that during an event?
We've had some random rashes of it at different times, so it's not. I don't think it's related to any particular one event. I think this is just they're hitting us at different times, kind of whenever they show up and do it. There's no connection necessarily.
These are all listed on June 6th. There was like 6 of them on the same day. That's what
Right, it's not unusual for us to have when the groups of them that tend to do this stuff, when they hit us, they'll usually hit a couple of spots or neighborhoods or multiple cars at one time, or it's usually not one and done. they're typically out in the neighborhoods. The new trend now is to shake the doors and windows for the open stuff that's unlocked. They don't break the windows out as much as they used to, so they'll go to the neighborhoods or the parking lots or wherever they're at and hit, and they'll shake doors, and if it's open, then that's where they're hitting. So usually we'll have more than one vehicle. Thank you.
Council?
See if Chief Nichols can answer a question for me.
Councilmember O'Rourke for Chief Nichols.
How do you like being chief so far?
It's good.
Thanks.
Finally settling in a little bit.
And we might can sidebar this, but I want to throw it out in public too. A couple of I do love everything that y'all respond to and two different, in both columns, and a not statistically insignificant column is invalid responses. So maybe you and I can get together. I'd like to kind of pick your brain on what y'all's response is to that, and because the industry I work in for like my real job, I work with seniors a lot, so I'd love to kind of dig in and see what happens once you respond to an invalid type situation. If there's care, if there's other adults present, if there's just to see what the long term is on that. But we can get together hopefully.
I would be glad to do that.
Appreciate it.
It is a issue that there's not even good answers to that we've been able to find, and we've tried to do some strategic things to help it out, but it is a huge part of our call volume that's only increasing.
Yeah. So I'll email you and see if we can get together.
That would be great.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anything further from council? Before I release our department heads, I've already talked to Chief Hanshaw. He's staying for another agenda item. And Mr. Lupu, if you can stay for possible sanitation questions for our first business item. But the rest of you are free to go. Thank you for being here this evening. We appreciate your presence. Moving on to our business items, this is a committee of the whole, so these items are before us in anticipation of them being moved to the agenda of the next business meeting. Item 7A, SP-2024-11, Timbers Edge ID Major Change. Charlene Carter, our planner, if you would summarize, please.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Timbers Edge started in 2021. Its ID development, it was going to be a restricted 55 and older type of development. It's 19 acres. Of that acreage, a third was going to be green spaces, walking track, those type of items. The major change that has come before Planning Commission and now before you all is the design wants to change and increase from 42 single-family homes to 49, remove the rear alley and rear load garages. That was a point of discussion in 2021 with Public Works, Fire, and Planning as far as the rear load and making sure trucks can get through and turnarounds. That project kind of stopped in its tracks, and now it's been picked up by some of the representatives that are here tonight. Planning Commission did recommend a 5-0 to allow the major change. Director Derby also agreed with the change. As you can see on the plan, Mayor, can you pull the
Yes.
presentation? So this project is
the large button on the remote will advance your slides for you there.
okay. This project is located at 612 Neely Ferry Road. There's one small parcel in between Plain Elementary. It's on the same side. There's a large stormwater pond, detention pond at the rear area. And so here's the plat of that. If I may kind of point out some items. So here we see on the old plan where the rear loaded garages. Sorry.
Back.
That's the correct. Okay, so we had 2 entry points to come to this back alleyway. Then you could egress and come all the way down to the cul-de-sac and turn back. There were less, again, 42 was the count. Now they've added
up to 49, so there's more here, and then there's more at the entryway, but this whole, as you can see on this next map, the alley has been removed. Lots have been split off right here. We have more here. Still have the green spaces. I think the intent is to still have pocket parks, rubberized walking track, those type of items. There are improvements, and I did check to make sure that DOT had the improvements for Neely Ferry in West Georgia listed. They do have kind of a summary. They don't have a date on the site yet, but they do have a summary of those projects. Also, there were some questions about the site location that came in to you all. I did call the Department of Natural Resources. It's not the responsibility of a developer or a builder to relocate wildlife. But if there are birds, if there is an endangered species, there would be some avenues to handle those. Also, you know, a lot of this discussion deals with DOT and them letting us know and determining what traffic and there is a tie-in sidewalk on that side of the road that will end up tying to Plain Elementary, and I'll be able to answer any questions you might have. And we do have representatives from DRB and Gray Engineering. So,
Thank you. Motion is in order. Councilmember Roche.
Mayor, I move that council approve SP 2024-11 Timbers Edge ID major change.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Roche with a second from Councilmember Root. Discussion? Councilmember Roche.
I had some questions about some of the reasons for the changes. This document first starts out. Hang on. Sorry. And that didn't work either. There were comments at the beginning that said that there were some questions that the city had and everything kind of came to a grounding halt. Were those questions about DOT? Were they about emergency services? What brought this project to a halt since we voted on it in 2022?
So the rear alleyway was really a point of contention because the ability for the sanitation trucks to go through and the fire department. And so the tight corners where these little side streets were coming in was the issue.
Okay.
Planning did have a number of comments, but those kind of go through our process as far as, you know, layouts, changes, sidewalks, those kind of things. But the main thing was the egress of the public safety being able to get in there, and then sanitation being able to.
So sanitation wasn't going to be able to work with the rear load garages?
Yes, because it was so tight in the turns, there was some distinct questions about that.
Questions or?
Concerns, it was not approved through Director West.
Okay.
So there need to be changes made.
I'm going to ask Mr. Lupu if you would come to the microphone, please. And I hate to put you on the spot. I was hoping Mr. West would be here. I talked with Mr. West yesterday, and we went back to the original paperwork. And the question that he had at that time that showed up on the paperwork was, how wide are the alleys going to be for the rear garage access? He expressed no concerns about access other than how wide were those roads, and asked that that number be provided. It was provided back then at that time, and the width of those alleyways are 18 feet. And he had no concerns about sanitation being able to reach the rear loaded garages unless people parked their cars on the 18-foot wide street and got in the way, but that's not a function of the street not being wide enough. Would you be aware of any concerns with being able to get a sanitation truck down an 18-foot wide?
No, I would. I'm not familiar with this, but no, I believe we can get in there. We usually use, if anything, we have a smaller trash truck, like a rear loader, that we use, that's what we use for tight streets, smaller areas like that. So it wouldn't be a problem.
I just wanted to clarify that sanitation, I don't believe, did have that concern about the width at the 18-foot width. So
Like I said, I'm not familiar with this, so I don't want to steer you wrong, but I know we would have a smaller trash truck to get it.
thank you, Mr. Lupu. Councilmember Rochette.
So were there any concerns about emergency vehicles or anything like that? Would emergency vehicles be pulling up? I guess I'm reference to Charlene.
Oh, sure.
So I think the one question in a recent discussion was all roads will require no parking on the streets at the location. So if the alley was to remain, just making sure that there's no on-street parking, which we are having in some other subdivisions, just so it's not blocking access and the roadway.
But if this is approved, the alleyways go away, correct?
Correct. But if it is not approved, either way, the roads are 24 feet wide, and I think there is some issue with, with the on-street parking situation.
That was one of the features that I believe contributed to the ID development zoning, was to provide above average open space amenities, demonstrate innovative and creative planning techniques, improve upon the layout. I felt like the loaded, the garage, the alleyway, all of that would contribute to those things. I'm trying to figure out what's the replacement for that. What makes this an ID development at this point instead of just a general residential development?
Can we let the developers and designers
Please.
Councilmember Chad Carson at 30 Gatewood. So essentially, we tried to stick as closely as we could to the originally approved ID. Yes, to your point, the ID does spell out certain things where it's more of an innovative district. It mentions cul-de-sacs. It mentions some rear alleys. The rear alleys, it looks like it was a tight turn. And certainly, I don't drive a truck, so I can't speak to how wide you need. But it was such a sharp kind of turn in the corners that the viability, from my understanding, was just made it a little bit difficult in there. And in addition, we were able to make the lots a little bit larger. That way we can ideally try to provide a higher variety of product, not just the same kind of small, 30-foot product or whatever that may look like. So again, as close as we could to the originally approved document. It was originally at not to exceed 50 units was still there. That's what the original statement of intent said. The design, we tried to stay relatively similar, tried to stay with similar open space. So ultimately, that our goal was, if it was seen as applicable to the ID previously, then we'd like to stick to that as close as possible. We're just not equipped to do an age-restricted community. We're happy to do age-targeted, where it'll be a maintenance-free community where you don't have to cut grass or anything like that. We've also got options that maybe a little more that people may like more, whether it's a walk-in shower or low amenities or stuff like that. So we're happy to stick with the age-targeted. We're just not equipped to do age-restricted. And that's one thing you would ask is kind of a...
No, I'm glad you mentioned it because that somehow missed me. I heard Charlene a minute ago allude to that, but I didn't see it in the actual change. So another change is also going to be that this will no longer be a 55 and over community.
It will not, no ma'am.
That's very disappointing. That's just very disappointing. I saw something in here about the roads being given back to public. What was that change about?
So I think originally the roads, because they had the alleyways, were going to be private roads, and these would just be deeded back to the city as public roads.
So the city would be maintaining everything?
Yes, ma'am. If that's a sticking point, certainly, again, we're not equipped on the age restricted, but if that's a sticking point, we're happy to discuss what private roads look like.
What was the cost difference in including the rear loaded garages and accommodations for 55 plus versus none of those things?
I don't know on the rear loaded garages. It's a completely different product, and while some of our communities have them, I'm not sure, to be completely honest. And then on the other one where, forgive me, rear loaded garages and what was, 55 plus. So there's just so many legal restrictions that you have to get into, that's just not in our bandwidth across the nation. We don't have any divisions or anything that would allow us to pursue that 55 plus. With the insurances and that you've got to have certain, I don't know if you have to have people on staff, if you've got to have certain transportation or anything like that. So I really can't speak to that much as I'd like to.
Okay. I don't want to jump, but would I be safe in assuming that this new plan is more cost effective for you as a developer?
I'm not sure. And I say that honestly because we didn't bring the first development to you. So it was actually brought to us by a third party. We looked at it, looked at the overall site plan and the statement of intent, and then just tried to modify it as little as possible. So I'm not sure what their thought process was, good, bad, or indifferent. I'm not sure.
So they walked away and you're picking it up?
Essentially, yes, ma'am. Or trying to restart it. Yeah.
That's all for now.
Councilmember Roop.
So I'm trying to figure out why. I made a couple phone calls to this as well. So what was the overall reasoning why you're changing this? Is it because of the street concerns from fire and trash pickup? Is that what started this? Were you wanting to add 8 units? Were you trying to cut costs like Councilmember Roche was asking, like the difference of the back garage versus the front garage? What ultimately led this for you to buy this property and come before us?
Sure. So again, we didn't necessarily design the original one, but when the property was brought in front of us, we took a look at it, started with the overall site plan and statement of intent, and then just tried to see how we could, stay as close to that as possible. Obviously, some modifications with the alleyways. They're a little bit bigger lots now because you don't have the rear alleyways. We try to still keep the small pocket parks, cul-de-sac, and then the kind of little open space park. Actually, that's the old one, but still the kind of park in the middle. So again, the changes were not out of necessity, but just to try to stay within the original statement of intent and just modify it in a minor sense.
So let me ask you, how much green space has been erased from a 42 home lot to a 50 on your new plans? How much green space has been erased? You said not much, but I'm curious if you have those numbers.
I may defer to our civil on this. She may be able to better answer that. You have to speak on that?
I know.
My name is Beverly Wilkes and I work for Gray Engineering. So the difference in the two statement of intents, the previous one said that 9.4 acres of green space was approximately included in the old plan. Some of that I would like to point out, I do believe that they were counting the alleyway space as a part of that green space, open space area. In our plan, and I can confirm because it is our plan and I can tell you what the green space you're looking at, that green hatching, that's 6.7 acres of true green space, of what is actually going to stay green, is the difference between the two plans. So in essence, roughly 2 acres difference as far as the statement of intent goes. Of course, me not having the old plan, I can't guarantee how they calculated their acreage, but it did appear that the alleyways was included in that. But from a size perspective of that, as Chad said, basically the alleyway we gave to the lots, we gave to the homeowners instead of putting that in, say, a green strip area, which could have been done on something like this. But we are at 6.7 acres with the green that is shown.
Okay, thank you. I have a follow-up. Mr.
Yes, sir. Chad Carson.
Carson.
Yes, sir.
Coach Carter, forgive me.
Sorry.
Just a couple of follow-up questions. This was one of my first votes. I remember this because this is my first development, and I wasn't too sure at that point. It was literally my first meeting. I do remember when I eventually cast a yes vote, it was based on 3 criteria that I based my vote on. I still remember this. My wife tells me I'm losing my memory. I think I've still got it pretty good. One of them was the fact that it was a smaller subdivision, 42 homes stuck out to me. 50 isn't that much more, but I remember thinking 42 was kind of cramming them in anyway. And I liked the extra green space, which now about a third of it has been cut out. I like the rear facing garages. That was a true idea, I think, that set this development a little bit different. I think what initially was my main reasoning was the 55 and older. There was a lot of questions being asked because it was next to a school. There was some concern that we had of car lines. The developer sold us on the fact that this is 55 and older. They're not going to have kids. They're not going to be out in the roads during school hours in the morning and in the afternoon. It won't hurt your traffic at all. I remember this being a real important decision for me to finally to approve this. And now you're taking all those away. I don't know if this plan's, it's certainly not better. The fact I did not know that it was you were taking the 55 requirement out. I feel bad that you're kind of holding the bag here, but maybe this perhaps should have been negotiated before you purchased the property, that we passed this with these criteria. I'm pretty stuck on it being a 55 and older. That was what originally allowed me to vote yes on this, because I was concerned with traffic. So I'll just leave it at that. I'm going to move it to I'm not going to vote it down now. I think it merits further discussions in a business meeting, but I do have concerns about this.
Does the age target help at all?
No. I think it's semantics. I think 55 and older means 55 and older. 55 targeting can mean, well, we'd rather have you 55, but we'll take you if you have small kids. I think it's gonna hurt the traffic in this area. This West Georgia Road is right there. It's becoming one of our busiest streets in the city, and probably even perhaps the county. And even though it's a small, what I'm worried of, families with small children start buying it. It becomes known as, hey, this is a nice neighborhood for small children, young families, and that's what it's going to be full of, and it's going to add to the traffic in that area. So those are my concerns.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
If I may respond to that.
Sure.
I certainly appreciate the feedback. I'm glad you remember that. You know, I don't want to say I regret saying we took out the 55, but we want to be transparent. I mean, there's nothing to hide in here from the original statement under 10,000 now. On that, yes, there are some more units on here, but we do still remain true to the original statement that said there will be less than 50. We're closer to it, obviously, but it still remains true to that. And then we also spoke with, I believe, John, that mentioned there was some desire to extend the sidewalk up to the school, up to Plain Elementary, and we're happy to do that as well. If that's,
I think that was in the original plan as well.
Yes, sir, we get that.
All right, thank you.
Typically, I wait to go last, but the mayor is going to jump in here and make a couple of points. First, are you the owner of this property? Have you purchased it?
No, sir, we have not.
This is contingent on our approval.
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. That's, I think, an important clarification. Also, in institutional memory here is going back to 2021, when this was first proposed to come into the city as our mid, which would have come in at 50, which is what you're requesting, is a max of 50. So you're coming back to something that was first recommended by the Planning Commission by a 5-0 unanimous vote to deny, and by a 7-0 unanimous vote was denied by City Council. This came back as an ID in 2022, and I think that's already been covered. But just want to clarify that the request is to go back to something that we have originally denied, less green, less innovative, more traffic without the 55 plus. That was a key point that Councilmember Root made, that we were sold on this idea that 55 plus would be less driving. More units, which also equals more traffic, which we were really sold on the idea that this was going to be less than 50. It was going to be 42. So typically I would vote something through because that would give you a chance to remedy these things. It doesn't sound to me like there's much remedy that would be attractive to you, but I will vote it through without, basically, when it gets to the business agenda, I'm going to vote no. So, Councilmember Root. I'm sorry, Councilmember Root.
Yeah, I looked at all this and I actually live in a neighborhood that's very similar to the original statement of intent. And you mentioned a couple of times we tried to stay as close to that as possible. I guess the question without sounding kind of like a jerk or whatnot, why not just stay with the original statement of intent and build it as is? What we run into in our neighborhood when we have detached garages, I'm in a home, it makes us truly innovative. We have 3 or 4 types of different dwellings. We have 2 alleyways. Sanitation doesn't even come down our alleyways. We put ours out at the main road. But there is no remedy here at all for parking. I mean, we just had our road deemed deemed a fire lane, so we can't park out front. So everyone that has a townhome now has 2 spaces, and that is absolutely it. When this was built less than 10 years ago, the remedy at the time was to put in a couple of pads. So there's literally about 7 extra parking places for 19 different units. And I don't see any remedy for that in the new or the old, to be honest with you. But there's been no issue, it seems like, from the original statement of intent when it comes to sanitation or anything like that. So I just don't see anything innovative in this. My neighborhood's innovative. It absolutely is. We have the rear garages. They're detached from their dwelling. I live in a single family home. So we're definitely, this has gone from something that was innovative to something that's not. And the only thing to show a reason why we're doing this is to add extra units. Which of course I know we're here to make money and things like that. But I guess the biggest thing for me is why not just stick to the original statement of intent, build it like it was presented then, with a few less units, the amenities that were promised before. It would make the process a lot easier. I have a long-standing tradition here to pass everything out of the committee of the whole to the business meeting. And I will do that again today, but I see significant flaws in this. For the citizens of Simpsonville and the impact it would have on Simpsonville. But if certain things can be addressed, maybe it's something to look at, and I do try to give people the ability to do that and move it to a business meeting. But as of right now, I'm kind of like the mayor said, I'll give the opportunity, but there's a lot of issues here. But
Sure, fair enough. Mr. Mayor, just to go back, I apologize if I misspoke on this. I just, with the ID zoning, put up the old statement of intent, and that's where I went with, where we went with, where we advised ourselves to go with. Not necessarily trying to go with something completely different. And your point, it's, ultimately we felt that if the council and Simpsonville felt like the original plan fell within the ID designation, and then fell within was similar to the future land use, residential village activity center. If this fell within the ID zoning, that we could remove, the 55 plus restricted, because we're just not equipped on that side of things. The alleyways to give the homes a little bit more property, keeping the amenities, keeping the setbacks. Appreciate your thoughts, just some additional feedback on our side of how we got here. Not necessarily just trying to push anything through. Because frankly, ID zoning is a little more difficult on our civil engineer than just a regular, residential zoning. So this was a little more work on their part, but we just felt like the attempt was to stick to the original statement of intent as close as possible.
Thank you. Councilmember Rocha.
I really feel like the application for change, project description, first line should have been, we're dropping the 55 plus community. That was a major thing, and it's not on here at all. I feel a little taken back that I just not figured that out. because that should have been in the change. That, I think that's part of the major change. Something that, not only the traffic, but if this does become just your average residential neighborhood and fills up full of kids. I had kids at Plain Elementary, they were full then. I just don't see that Plain Elementary School can handle the number of students that they would be getting. So again, this was attractive as 55 plus for all of the reasons, literally all of them. The traffic, the parking, it seemed like a good thing to go next to this school only because it was 55 plus. So I beg you to reconsider because I was really excited about this project. Again, I feel like the application should be updated.
If we are going to keep everything, and I know you just said that, that's your main sticking point. So I'm just trying to see, is there a way that if our site plan looked like the other one, but was not 55 plus, and the statement of intent was, if this was not correct, if it mirrors that plan, would that be something that would be a viable option in your eyes?
Are you saying
Still,
55 plus or no 55?
No.
Nope, 55 plus was like the selling point for all of the reasons that we discussed for me personally.
Sure.
Again, I will agree with everyone else to go ahead and move it to the next meeting, but it's going to be a no there as it is now. The other thing for me is the city maintenance. Who was going to maintain the streets in the neighborhood before it was now diverted to the city? Who was going to maintain those? The HOA?
HOA, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Why are we changing that? Because that was something else that was very attractive to us. That's one last thing we have to maintain.
We're not opposed to private roads. A lot of times we'll just out of force of habit, just go to public roads after speaking with DOT, and normally that's all taken care of on the civil side to make sure that they would accept the roads and stuff like that. So typically we'll defer to the public roads, and a lot of times that's in order to kind of lessen the cost of the HOA, to be honest. Now with this being, the intent to be a maintenance-free community, private roads wouldn't be that big of a difference if they're already taken care of lawn care.
When I asked in the meeting in 2022 what the price point would be on these, it was in the mid 300s. What would this be going forward? If we were to approve this, what would the price point be for these homes?
I don't know. If I gave you a number, I would be lying.
Okay.
So honestly, it's not my field in the division, so I hate to just throw a number out there and be wrong plus or minus. I'm sorry.
Councilmember Hutchings.
Will this stormwater plan meet our new 100-year requirement?
Yes, sir. And especially with the current climate and anytime we do build a new subdivision, that's one of our top concerns. So my office is actually in the habit for any subdivision, we do hold back the 100-year storm to prevent any negative downstream effects. So yes, the pond you see would be sized accordingly to meet the requirements. Yes, sir.
What do you know what the square footage of the homes were in the original?
The original.
1,400 to 3,200 is what.
It looks to me like 1,700 square feet is the normal on this one.
The original that I'm showing is 1,700 to 3,000. And then we were proposing, so 17 to 3 on the original, and then 1,400 to 3,200 in our proposed statement of intent.
So you're gonna build 3,200 square foot house on the same size lot as a 1,400 square foot house?
So they're a little bit bigger without the alleyways. The widths are, okay, so 53-foot lots, so they are a little bit wider, I believe. So we were going to build up to 3,200, yes, sir. Or could build up to 3,200.
Well, just to reiterate what other council members have said, I remember this vote, and a big thing to me was the 55 plus, due to the location of this property with the Plain Elementary School being close by for several reasons, traffic and the student population. And it seems like what I'm seeing so far, eliminating that, eliminating the backloading lots, reducing the green space by 2 acres, changing the road ownership to the city, increasing the density to 42 to 49. I can't see this being an ID anymore. And so I'm very reluctant to even moving on to the next meeting with all of those negatives. Are you open to going back to the backloading lots and the other things with this original ID required? I know the city, but my understanding was you had a concern that the alleyways weren't wide enough, but I think I'm hearing that that's not a concern. Is that correct?
Again, I don't drive a truck, so just take it from what my understanding was, that where it's got a hard turn, kind of right here, where it's just that hard left, that may be no problem with them. Not necessarily the 18 feet there, but when you've got the right turn there, or left turn, and then down here as well as up there. I think that was maybe one of the concerns. I don't want to speak for anybody or assume or anything like that, but that's.
Could we hear from the city on that?
The way, but you may know a little bit more.
Do actually, John had sent in email with some information on it. I don't need to overstep at all. Because part of it was a little bit of the question of that. I had talked with John way before we submitted this, and it was not that it couldn't be done. It can be serviced with the original layout. I think the idea was it just wasn't ideal long-term. I think like that was mentioned, a different truck would need to be utilized specifically for this as opposed to, say, the neighbors across the street, for instance. So it was just not the ideal situation, and they could foresee long-term issues, was what we were kind of told. So not impossible, not doable, just not ideal. So.
The city want to comment on that as well?
Yes, actually was saying we can use a smaller trash truck, a single axle, 7-ton, which that would definitely require for that truck to go on that area all the time. Our bigger trucks will have a little trouble.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchings. Councilmember Rupp.
I'd like to say, we passed this 2 years ago, and we didn't hear anything about trash trucks not being able to drive in the street, so I'm confused why that's an issue now. Director Derby was here with us. He wasn't the director then, but this is the first I'm hearing about it. So I'm a little confused why now this seems to be an issue. It wasn't 2 years ago. We haven't heard from it. I just want to be on record that that was never brought up to us. It was never questioned that it would be a problem. That's why we passed this originally. And let me just echo something that the mayor said, that, you know, this original plan was voted no by the planning commission and council. So I'm almost leaning where Councilmember Hutchins, I always vote things through the business meeting, but if there's not a lot of give on going back to the original plans, I don't even know if I'm going to vote it through the business meeting today. Normally I'm not like that, but I think maybe we're just wasting each other's time if especially 55 and older. I'm not gonna, that's just one of my budging points. The garages and that can be argued, but if there's no consideration on your business's part, and I understand as a business, you have to do what's best for you. As a council, we answer to the city. That's not a budgetable place for me. Maybe you can argue other things. If you say, hey, you know what, we can budge on this. We'll get some other plans. You can look at it next time. I'd be willing to move it through and merits another discussion, but it doesn't sound like, and that's fine, it doesn't sound like there's give with your company on that. Am I reading that correctly?
We're just not physically able to. Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay.
And we certainly want to be respectful of your time as well. So if it's something where we're just going to hit a wall at the end, we wouldn't want you to waste your time.
And I'm not speaking for council.
No.
I'm just saying that's not a thing that I'm willing to give on personally. I'm not telling my council members how they need to vote, but I just want to make sure that we're upfront that if that's not something we want to go back on the drawing table, then maybe it helps us make our decision a little bit easier and perhaps yours as well. So I appreciate you being honest. Thank you.
Yeah, Court, if I may, is there any site plan that you guys can see, and forgive the ask if this isn't the right arena, that we can get behind here that's not 55 plus? Because we still love the area, still love, you know, the size of the lot, still love that kind of smaller development. But we're happy to completely change it and come back with something completely new. But if this is a 55 plus area and that's all that feasibly could get through, I just don't want to waste our civil time.
Yeah, Mr. Carson, I'm going to have that question deferred. Maybe you can talk to council members after the meeting. That's a pretty broad question, so if we could. Is council okay with we call for the vote? Okay. On the motion to approve SP-2024-11 Timbers Edge ID major change, all those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed signify by saying no.
No.
Do we need a roll call vote?
Yes.
If you would do a roll call vote for Clark.
Councilmember O'Meara,
Yes.
Councilmember Root,
No.
Councilmember Williams,
Yes.
Councilmember Roche,
No.
Councilmember Pinkerton,
No.
Councilmember Hutchings,
No.
Mayor Shewmaker.
Yes. I believe that was 3 yeses and 4 noes. So the motion fails. Thank you, Mr. Carson. Item 7B, proposed speed limit change for Poinsettia. Councilmember Pinkerton, this is your item. If you would summarize, please.
Yes, sir. I'll try to do it as quickly as possible. So this idea came about from discussions I had with Administrator Gracely and the mayor on traffic concerns we have in Poinsettia and what I perceive to be more of in the future with the downtown development. Poinsettia, of course, has been well stated that it's not really a cut through, it's a bypass for a lot of people going through the neighborhood. But that's not all. What I'm proposing to do, though, is propose the speed limit, which you'll find in most cases 25 miles per hour down to 20. There is one sign in the neighborhood I know of on Astor where it is 20 miles per hour and actually turns to 25 later in a more condensed area. But it's not just the traffic cut-throughs, bypasses. It's 300 homes in the neighborhood. It's about 6 miles of road, and it gets used daily by walkers, bikers, people with strollers, people walking dogs. Run-In Company has a weekly run through there. I think it's Thursday nights now, it might be Wednesdays. They have sanctioned run events. And it's just full of people, and we have no sidewalks. I appreciate that 25 is probably standard. What I'm trying to do is get a little bit more visibility to the speed limit as a reduced speed to 20 miles an hour to add a little safety measure for the citizens of Poinsettia. So I propose that we change the speed limit throughout Poinsettia from 25 miles per hour to 20 miles an hour.
Second.
A motion from Councilmember Pinkerton with a second from Councilmember O'Rear. Discussion? Councilmember O'Rear.
Obviously, this is my home neighborhood where I grew up, and I agree with Councilmember Pinkerton to have uniformity and lower the speed limit. I just want to point out, though, that in the past, this council has voted to barricade streets without any other relief and no other options of relief for the same purposes that Poinsettia and Fernwood Drive are being used for. And I think in the future we need to relook at that and find relief that's not complete closure, because at the time the word was used was feasibility. Obviously, it's not feasible to barricade streets in Poinsettia, but limit to the speed is much more a feasible thing safety-wise for Poinsettia to lower it, because believe me, I was a kid dodging cars there, so I understand. So I will absolutely vote yes for this one.
Councilmember Roche.
I'm all in favor for any council member that wants to do something that makes their neighborhood safer. I'd like to do this in my neighborhood. We need some speed bumps. I live across from the play park that's dedicated to our neighborhood. And our HOA makes improvements and the kids are coming. And summer, it's every single day. And there are no speed bumps. And we get so much cut through traffic there. We need a lower speed limit. We need speed bumps for the safety. So again, I definitely would get behind this, as well as adding some speed bumps. I think the problem that I see with this is that if 25 isn't being enforced, 20 is not going to be enforced either. We could lower it to 10. If there's not an active police presence, if there's not some other way to actually enforce this, if people don't feel it, it doesn't matter what number you put on the sign. There will have to be enforcement. And honestly, if we could find it in the budget just for somebody to patrol neighborhoods and enforce speed limits in our cut-through neighborhoods and places where kids are playing, I would approve that in a minute. Just hire another dedicated officer for that. As we are growing, safety is absolutely paramount in my mind. So anything that we can do to make our neighborhoods safer, I'm behind it.
Councilmember Hutchings.
I have a couple questions for the police chief. Thanks for staying over.
Yeah, no problem.
Are we effectively enforcing the current speed limit?
This is gonna be the same question we visit on a regular basis. As she said, resources. If we have, we take what we have and we try to address this as much as possible. Do I have enough folks to put somebody in there all the time, 24/7 to catch? Absolutely not. It would need more resources, more police officers. It would take more than one officer to patrol one, because every neighbor is gonna have the same issue, so we try to address them as much as we can by intake from complaints, data that we collect on our own, plus what the officers do. So we try to address as much of it as we can. I just don't have the resources to be there all the time, every day in every neighborhood.
I had a little discussion with Councilman Pinkerton about speed bumps, and is that something that would be more effective than this, or?
That can be a matter of opinion on traffic. Everybody has a different opinion on which traffic calming devices work better in which situations. I know there's also issues with the fire department and their trucks when you get into the speed bumps. So for me to answer as a whole, yeah, it doesn't affect us as much, and it may slow some down. It just depends on the circumstances and where you're utilizing those at. So there is some benefit, but I can't guarantee it's like a lot of things. It won't fix all of the problems. It's not possible to do it with those. We don't have enough resources.
Well, I'm in support of this, limiting the speed limit further. My own neighborhood, we have the same problem with the Alder Drive being a raceway cut through from Davenport to Newberry. But as Councilmember O'Shea said, without enforcement, it may not be as effective as we hope.
That's correct. And we would be glad to take input from the communities when they are seeing problems, and I know we get them on a regular basis. And again, resources, we will try to direct resources as much as we can to where we are, which is coming back to something that Councilmember Rears touched on earlier with filling staffing. That helps too, because that allows our traffic unit and stuff to be focused more on that, the additional efforts to work on these problems versus simply just reacting to the emergency calls for services.
What about these signs that we put up that indicate your speed? I know that's helped. I think that's helped a little bit on South Main with the problems we had there. People are now a little more aware, I think, of how fast they're going.
Right, that's another traffic calming device. That's something else we use to try to compensate for the times when our resources aren't available to be in those areas, so that we can slow some of them down.
We have multiple signs we can use.
We've got one out on West Georgia Road, we got one out on Harrison Bridge, and the one you referred to on South Georgia, we've got a couple of them out throughout the city. So.
Thanks, sir.
Councilmember Pinkerton.
Yeah, just to go back on speed bumps, so you know, a couple of years ago, we lobbied for speed bumps in Poinsettia, and they did a study, and actually on South Almond Drive, we were able to get 2, but they were turned down. One was feasible, but the second one, was not, because it's limited to intersections, driveways, and I actually talked to Mr. Derby about this. I know he's absent today, but because it was on a slope, his concern was that cars coming down the ramp at high speeds would hit that bump and have a big problem with the car. Of course, my response was, yeah, exactly. But there's other opportunities for speed bumps in our neighborhood. I know that South Almond's actually a thoroughfare for the fire department to get to other neighborhoods. So I know it's a little bit difficult, but there are opportunities. Astor Drive is one that I think, matter of fact, I walked through Astor Drive today and noticed 2 stop bars being installed on Astor and Fernwood. So it sounds like a stop sign's going up. On enforcement though, and not to point fingers, but when we put a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit on South Main because of Swamp Rabbit Trail, I don't know how many times I've been down that road where the police department has been there and there's a big sign that flashes 25. I wish they would just come over to South Almond or Poinsettia Drive or any of those streets one day and sit there and check, because there's plenty of time could do it on South Main, which could be a 35-mile-an-hour speed, but for whatever reason it's 25. So I appreciate that there's more enforcement, but I appreciate your help that maybe you target some neighborhoods once a month, go out and show a presence and see if we can slow people down a little bit.
We actually do have a director patrol, which is usually done by that, and that's based on data that we collect from the radar stuff or from complaints issued from the citizens of the community. That's why it's important for them to share with us what they're seeing, because we do direct our patrol efforts when they're available with our resources. That's how we move them around. So, and we will make an effort to get out there and do some more, be visible in your neighborhood again. Again, come back to resources. We are trying to do that stuff. They'll communicate what their needs are. We do already have something in place, what we call director patrol, to try to address those issues.
And I appreciate that. Thank you.
So, yes, sir.
Thank you, Council. I believe that every member of Council is in favor of moving this item to the next business agenda. And if you're not in favor of that, just if we can move our discussion to the next business meeting, that would be helpful. But if you're not in favor of that, you can vote against this motion. I move the previous question. I hear a second.
Second.
I have a motion from the mayor with a second from Councilmember Williams to move the previous question. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. All opposed signify by saying no. That motion carries unanimously. On the motion to approve the proposed speed limit change for Poinsettia from 25 miles per hour to 20 miles per hour, all those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. All opposed signify by saying no. That motion carries by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you very much.
If there are no objections, we will stand adjourned.